everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spartan Showcase. I'm your host, Joey Dubois. I'm joined once again by our principal, Mr. Rubin. Mr. Rubin, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me back again, Joe. Appreciate it.
So, Mr. Rubin, a couple weeks ago, the National Honor Society sent a quiz bowl team to Auburn High School to compete. Did they perform up to your expectations?
Well, I wasn't there, so I'm sure there are some questions they wish they would have back. I'm really happy that this is something that's gotten some legs in the entire league. A couple of years ago, I remember the principals having a conversation about what are some ways we can bring students together in maybe some different settings as opposed to just athletics. And I'd had some experience with running Quiz Bowl as a National Honor Society advisor back when I was still teaching, and it's caught on. So it's Uxbridge will host a couple of schools next month. I think Millbury, Northbridge, and Tantascwa will be here in December. Win or lose, I think it's nice to win. It's nice to show your knowledge of a lot of different topics, but at the same time, I think it's a great opportunity for our kids to get to know some students at other schools, to work together, to have some fun, and for something to have a little bit more of an academic purpose is always a good opportunity. So, hopefully at the end of the year we've won more than we've lost, but either way, I hope the students who are involved in it, the advisors, get something out of it across the whole league. And as the sort of de facto league commissioner, I get to make sure that there's a little bit more consistency, because I know everybody still trying to figure out how to moderate these things and do it the right way. So we'll hopefully do better the next time. And again, if the wins come, great.
The senior play, The Curious Savage, was recently performed by the Drama Club. What did you think of that?
I loved it. I joked with a couple people in the audience that night that it was kind of like watching a lighter version of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is one of my favorite movies, and it's a great book. It's one of the few films I actually think is better than the book, but that's another story for another day. I loved the play. I thought the actors did great. I really applaud the poignancy of it. I think it was really relevant, despite being, a play that was set in the early 1950s, or was originally made in the early 1950s. It's a tribute to a group of seniors as well, who, you being one of them, Joe, that have really committed so much to all of us through the theater company, that an opportunity to showcase their talents one more time is something that I hope they will appreciate long after the curtain's gone down. It's because I know that everybody in the audience did. It was a really fun production.
Fall sports are pretty much wrapped up at this point. How would you evaluate our teams and their seasons?
Well, you start with cross country, both winning the league championships, and you kind of trace that out to tournament play. And cross country had a great season. Golf built on some successes this year. Boys and girls soccer both made the postseason. Field hockey went to the postseason, took a team to double overtime. Football, while missing out on the playoff bracket, has played two very good teams in the non-playoff bracket and won both games, and set up well for a game on Thanksgiving against another team that that is our arch rival. So we'll be riding a wave. Cheerleading had a good finish at their league competition. Not everybody can advance, and that's too bad. But overall, I think when we look back and we look at our participation numbers and we look at the success that our teams had, I'm sure there are some student athletes who would say, "Man, I wish we'd won 12 games instead of 7 or 8," and some people who would like to have a shot back in a postseason game. And some of our teams ran into really, really good teams, and that's what caused us to be knocked out. So, there's no shame in that either. Overall, very positive fall, and hoping to ride some of that momentum into the winter.
The guidance department is taking a group of students to Universal Technical Institute soon. Are you looking forward to this event?
Yeah, and a couple weeks ago we had a group of juniors who went to a field trip to Watertown High School, which was another college fair for schools that are mostly science and technology engineering based. I think what's important for our guidance staff to continue doing is exposing different types of kids to different types of schools that are out there so that seniors make well-informed decisions. And more important than that, they give them a context for a conversation with their families. It's not as simple as it was, maybe 20 years ago, where you look at it and you say, okay, well, we're here in Uxbridge. Geographically, the two schools that make the most sense are, Worcester State and UMass, and then we're done. There are a lot more options out there, and so seeing different schools of different academic type programs, different locations, different price points, different types of majors allows students to make good decisions and make the best decision they can. And the earlier we start that conversation with sophomores and juniors, the better off we're going to be. And that's the reason why we're doing more of these trips and programs. And the good thing about the UTI one is that one is actually sponsored in part by some of our regional partners, so there isn't a cost basis for the school where some of the other ones, and we host our own college fair. So by the time students are sitting down and making that decision to whittle down from, I think I might be interested in these 20 schools to these are the 6 or 8 to which I'm going to apply, they've made the most informed decision they can.
The Uxbridge High School Democrats recently hosted a table at lunch for voter pre-registration. What are your thoughts on this event?
Well, get kids who are registered to vote now. They could participate in the town meeting in the spring, and some of the other town special town meetings that come up. I mean, granted, we just had an election day that came and went, but and for some of these students, they won't be here next year. They'll be off and wherever they are, but. Part of what we have beyond just the academic responsibility is a civic responsibility, and we don't necessarily rely on that from an academic standpoint. I mean, you could teach a civics class or you can do civics, and that's what we are doing when you have some of our co-curricular organizations, and their mission is to hand out voter registration cards, regardless of party. I mean, I know that we have an Uxbridge Youth Democrats group here. We're trying to get the young Republicans to organize as well. It's I think something that's our responsibility as a school is to prepare kids and to prepare young adults for participation as good citizens. And so my hat's off to the group, to their advisor and their officers.
Our band recently performed at the Veterans Day Parade. How proud are you with the band and all they did?
Well, there isn't much that you can say about our music program that hasn't already been said. I think, Mrs. Penza does a great job, and, I think one of the next steps for us to do is merging this idea of a concert band and a marching band, and I would love to see us. I know there have been a lot of efforts by the Friends of Music to get our kids in full marching band regalia so that they're not in mismatched clothing, and that's the missing step for me, and that's something we're really thinking about as how we can do, because they deserve it. Just such a professional group, and such a job done by Mrs. Penza overall. I mean, you could say that about a lot of our advisors, but one of the things I think that we do really well here in terms of music and drama, band, chorus, all of the above is find a place and find a role and find a home for anybody who wants to be involved, and that's what makes me proud of them.
With quarter one coming to a close, how do you evaluate the year so far?
It's been a good year. I mean, I'm really proud of the staff. Ultimately, we started a new schedule last year. We made a couple of minor tweaks that most people don't see, and we've seen it working. The amount of collaboration that's happening, the fact that we're slowly pushing the needle up and trying to get people to do more, and to, I like to think that we get 6 hours a day with students. Let's have them be the busiest people in the building, and I hope students are feeling like teachers are making them work a little bit harder. That's not a bad thing. And in that, you put in some of the other challenges that we've had, some of the conversations that are happening that are big ticket items for a high school. When you're talking about building reconfigurations and you're talking about reaccreditation, these are things that most schools would throw up their arms and say, oh my God, this is going to be really scary. And we soldier on and accept challenges and make the best of situations and do it in I think a really productive way, So, and we shelter that from students so that students aren't worried about, they're just worried about showing up and being in class and doing the work that's asked of them and then some. We're firing on a lot of cylinders, and I'm happy with that. Are there some things I think we could do better? Sure, there always are. I'm probably my own toughest critic, and I don't necessarily think that things are ever going to be perfect or that I'm ever going to be satisfied. In fact, when I coached soccer, the first T-shirt that we had made for the team, the back of the shirt, everybody has the shirt that says, what the team is and the sport and the soccer ball, but the back said never be satisfied. And I don't think I'll ever be satisfied. I think that we're making progress, and I like the direction that things are going, but the day that I'm satisfied, I probably need to be out of the big chair. So with that, we have to ride some momentum and keep pushing things. And as the weather gets colder and the days get longer and our days get shorter and it gets a little bit tougher to motivate students, and as staff tend to, the winters are tough on everybody, that's when we really need to look at each other and keep pushing forward, because that's what we're going to do. We can't just take January off, for example, because it gets a little bit cold and wet. We've got to keep pushing, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
How do you keep this momentum going for the next 3 quarters of the year?
Well, you put your faith in the hands of professionals to reflect on the successes and use them to motivate you. I know for me, I've got my list of faculty meetings and things I want to accomplish set in place, not just for this year, but probably moving into the next couple. And it's part of that is being like a coach, and I believe very strongly in that model. And at the same time, it's having each individual classroom focus on the successes. We know there are going to be challenges. Those challenges happen every single year, but we don't want to let the challenges outweigh the successes. And when we arrive at those challenges, how do we face them together? Because the water cooler talk of, this really stinks around here right now, that doesn't benefit anybody. A couple of years ago, we talked about non-discussables, and the term non-discussable in education means things that we just don't want to feel comfortable talking about, and we're going to make a list of those things, and we're going to put them right front and center. And when you make those things that are non-discussable discussable, you find that the problems start to go away. And over the course of the year, those things come up. And when they come up, I need to be there to be supportive. I need families to be there to be supportive. And I need students to own some of the things that they can own themselves. Nothing is perfect. And by the same token, when kids feel like there's a problem, or if kids feel like things are hitting a kind of a tough, I used to say this to my English students when I was teaching English, and the kids would come in kind of downtrodden because they had a really difficult week that week in chemistry, because junior year chemistry and English our kids always seem to have the same schedule. Open your mouth, advocate for yourself, come into the room and say, hey, we have this big lab due Friday. I know you have this book test that we're going to take on Friday, or these essays that we have to do on Friday. Is there any way we can push that to Monday or Tuesday? As long as those lines of communication are open, you can take momentum a very long way. But it starts as simple as those really small conversations, and when it's things that are big and it involves entire groups of people or involves entire cohorts of students, that's where I get involved. But if people are willing to have those conversations without me there, then I'm doing my job.
Well, we had a nice conversation here today, Mr. Rubin.
Anytime, Joe. I've never met a microphone. It's a little one, but I've never met a microphone I don't like.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for all you do.